Thank you, Susan. Good afternoon, everyone. As Susan said, my name is Yaser. I've come from Gaza, Palestine. I work with the Glencree Center for Peace and Reconciliation, do some project work. I'm not a staff member there, but I do some project work with them. And I also teach in Trinity College, some courses in relation to comparative political processes, and also Israeli-Palestinian history. Today, before I start, I'd like to thank the organizers of this afternoon, this conference. I'd like to thank them for the invitation to speak. Special thanks to Susan Glass. I hope I got the second name right. Yes. And her colleagues for all their assistance and work to make this event possible. Thank you again, Susan. I was invited today to speak about the challenges of a peace process in the Middle East in the context of Israel-Palestine. I suggested talking about the failure of the peace process in Israel-Palestine because we don't have much success there. So I wanted to discuss with you and share with you some personal reflections and part of my academic work in relation to the political failure of the peace process, the Oslo in particular peace process in Israel-Palestine that started in the 90s. I'll talk about the causes of this failure, which are still relevant today and still have implications on the possibilities of a genuine peace and justice in Palestine. It's also important to remember when we are talking about Palestine that the struggle there is concerned mainly with land, self-determination, national rights, and identity. Before we talk about the political process and the failure of political processes in Israel-Palestine and make some links as well with the situation in Northern Ireland, in the north of Ireland, I would like to show you some images that I took myself in Gaza just after the attacks last summer when I was there. And my partner Amal, who also is here today, she took some of the photographs with me. We worked together on that. So I'd like to share some of those photographs with you just to set the context and to give you an idea about what part of the world are we talking about and show you some images in particular from Gaza. I'll start off by showing you the map. This is the map of Palestine and Israel at the same time. Here on this side, the photographs that I will be showing you, I took them in Gaza, okay, in this part of the world. And Gaza Strip, as you can see, it's a small piece of land by the Mediterranean Sea, okay. And you can see on the border of Gaza you have Egypt, okay, and on the other side of Palestine you have Jordan, okay, and this is the West Bank in Palestine. This is the city of Jerusalem there. This is the city of Bethlehem as well, just right in the middle, and the other cities of Palestine, and then you've got Gaza on the other side. The rest of it is Israel after 1948. Before that, it was historical Palestine under British rule. The British rule started in Palestine from after the First World War, from around 1917 up to 1948. This was the time when the State of Israel was created in Palestine. But before that, Palestine was under the full authority and control of the British Empire. So that's the map to set the political context and the location. Now, this is Gaza after the recent Israeli attacks last summer, which you've heard about. As I said, myself and my partner Amal took the photographs together right after the attacks. This is an image of a neighborhood in Gaza which was completely destroyed It's called Shujaiya neighborhood. It's a largely civilian neighborhood, and it was completely destroyed during the recent attacks. Most of these houses that you see in the image are family homes for ordinary people in Gaza. They've been reduced to rubble. They're destroyed completely. They're not livable anymore. And as we speak today, 500,000 of Gaza people are still displaced. And some of them are still living in schools as a shelter. They're using schools as a shelter. And some people don't have any place to go at all. This is Shujaiya neighborhood. This is also another image of destruction in Gaza right in my refugee camp. It's called Nusayrat camp. I took that when I visited my family home, just around the corner from where they are. There was this building completely destroyed for some of our family friends that we've always known. This is also another image of a destroyed building in Nusayrat. This is back to Shujaiya. Generally speaking, in terms of Gaza, if we are talking about Gaza, we have to talk about the population of Gaza and the location and the characteristics of Gaza. What is Gaza? Gaza is a home for 1.5 million people, and it's gone up to 1,000,007 now. It's a small piece of land. It's very small. And around, as I said, 1.5 million living there. Most of them are refugees from what was Palestine under British rule. Okay, and they were driven out of their land when the State of Israel was created in 1948, and again during the 1967 war, they were displaced. So about 70% of Gaza population are refugees, okay, and they have been displaced from their homes now for the third, fourth times in recent history. In terms of the population, 50% of Gaza population are children, according to UN reports and figures. UNICEF in particular, the UN organization that focuses on children and the situation of children in conflict situations. So you've got a population that half of it are children. So in practice, the attacks, the recent military attacks against Gaza were in practice were against a civilian and child population. Okay. Now about 500,000 of those children, as we speak now, are traumatized and they require psychological support because of what they have been through and the destruction that they have experienced. As we speak now, they still require help, they still require support. The UN organization that is working there, UNRWA, is struggling. It can't cope with the situation. In fact, again, as we speak now, it's facing a financial crisis, and the needs of Gaza people are getting higher and higher, especially after the recent destruction. Show another image here. This is again a neighborhood that I visited recently. This house is completely destroyed. It's for a family of about 12 people living there with their parents. You can see a sign here in Arabic, and what that says, it's interesting when I looked at it, because this destruction, the house is completely gone, but yet there is a sign there saying to whom this house belongs, or was belonging before it was destroyed. So people now actually, because they're afraid in the middle of this destruction that the land, the piece of land that the house is built on, might be gone or not recognized anymore. So they put up signs to say, this was my house, this was my land. Okay? And And that's again an indication that Gaza people are still attached to their homes, they're still attached to their land, and it's completely difficult for them to deal with this destruction, to deal with the destruction of their land and also homes. This is a man that I spoke to in the neighborhood. He's a child. If you look at her eyes, she's completely traumatized. That's what you see just from her look. She's completely traumatized. She was looking at me and she was very fearful, very fearful. Although I wasn't, I wasn't carrying anything, in particular, I wasn't armed and so on, but she was looking at me and she was terrified throughout the interview. And then her father explained to me after that, when I asked him about the child, he said she's completely fearful of anything that moves around here after the recent attacks. And she's traumatized, she requires psychological help, but we don't have this, we don't have the support to provide psychological help to her. And she's also too young to recognize what she's been through. Okay, this is another focused map of Gaza in particular. Okay. The main areas in Gaza are Rafah, that's the crossing with Egypt. Rafah crossing, it's completely closed now, so people can't get in and out. And you've got the Khan Yunis, which is another major city in Gaza. And then you've got Deir al-Balah here, which is the center of Palestinian refugees. This is where Amal also has come from. You've got Gaza, and Gaza, there is Gaza City, and then the Gaza neighborhoods around it. And then, as you see, Gaza is by the Mediterranean Sea. Historically speaking, Gaza had a very vibrant commercial and economic life based on the fact that its location is by the Mediterranean Sea. So you've always had people who came from different parts of Europe, different parts of Africa to trade in the Middle East, and they used Gaza as the way of the sea. Okay, and that's throughout history, ancient history, and still recent history. So Gaza can survive on its own. Gaza has the ability and the potential to develop its economy and to develop its infrastructure, but the occupation and the blockade isn't providing the opportunity for Gaza to do so, okay, by Israel. Now, this is a Palestinian economist that I talked to. He deals with analysis in relation to the economy in Gaza in relation to social development. And he said clearly that as things stand now in Gaza, if the situation continues as it is and the blockade isn't lifted by Israel on Gaza, rebuilding of Gaza could take 70, 80 years. He also said that, believe it or not, around 1 million people now depending on international aid in Gaza. And there are families who are living just on $1 a day, okay, which is less than £1. And the poverty in Gaza has reached 80% because of the siege and the blockade and the occupation. So the situation isn't looking hopeful. Now, this is a young lady in Gaza, Isra al-Mdallal, who I spoke to as well, a political activist, and she was completely concerned, rightly so, with the fact that many young people in Gaza are without jobs, without hope, and they will resort to violence. They will use violence. And she's a political social activist working with different groups. And also, she pointed out that a lot of young people in Gaza are trying to leave Gaza, and they're trying to use, they're trying to use different ways to leave Gaza. And one of them is to go into the Mediterranean and excuse me, and and go to Greece. Go to Turkey, and then from Turkey take a boat to Italy or Greece. And they don't know if they will survive the journey or not, but yet they want to leave this destruction. They want to leave this siege. They don't have hope. They have frustrations. They've lost their homes. Excuse me. In fact, on my way out of Gaza, I've met a young man, and he had a fake Turkish visa with him. And I asked him where he was going, and he said he was going to Turkey. He had a fake Turkish visa, and from there, I said, "Do you know where you're going?" He said, "I'll get on a boat, and I'll try to reach Europe, but I don't know if I will survive or not." And this is what, unfortunately, Israel is creating in Gaza: despair, frustration, lack of hope, and planting the seeds for a situation in Gaza that isn't livable at all, and for young people either to leave or resort to violence because of this difficult situation that they're living through. Nonetheless, there's hope in Gaza. Everywhere you go, you see some signs in English by politically active groups or socially active groups, and they put up signs in English so the rest of the world can see it, and also the international journalists in Gaza can see it. So in the middle of this destruction, you have a youth group who put up a sign saying, "Road to Hope." This is the road to hope. It's not the road to destruction. Sometimes it has double meanings. Sometimes it's not clear what they mean by that. The road to hope to leave, the road to hope to fight, to die, to live. We don't know, but there is still hope in the middle of this situation. Stop killing and so on. Back again to the bigger picture, because today I'm hoping to give you an idea about the political situation in Gaza and in Palestine in general, and the Israeli-Palestinian situation, and why a peace process has always failed in that part of the world. This is Palestine when it was under British rule. It's completely Palestine. The green land is Palestinian land. The Jewish areas, okay? You've always had a small Jewish community based on religious reasons living in Palestine, worshipping and accessing the holy sites. And they've always lived side by Palestinians. So this is the percentage here, very small. The green areas are Palestinian. And this map, you can also access it online. And then here you have the partition plan by the UN in 1947, basically proposing that the green areas go to Palestine and the white areas go to Israel, future Jewish state. And then here you've got the map after 1967, and you could see the land is getting smaller every year after year. Okay, and here there's Gaza, there's the West Bank, and now this is what's remaining in 2000, but we don't know if it has got smaller since then, because now we're talking about 2014. Okay, and in the middle of this Palestinian land, you've got also Israeli settlements. You've heard about the settlements, illegal settlements in the West Bank. They're based here, and they were based in Gaza until 2005. So in terms of the political realities of Israel-Palestine, the years of the early 90s witnessed intensive negotiations concerning the question of Palestine at the regional and international level, and led to the launch of the Oslo peace process in 1993. It's called Oslo peace process because it was negotiated and facilitated in Oslo, and this is where the name came from, the Oslo peace process. The two basic elements of the agreement are the declaration of principles, which specified the agreement terms, and the recognition letters from both sides. These were the years of hope and optimism in the 90s. among the majority of Palestinians and Israelis that peace has finally arrived in that troubled land, and there will be positive relations and a future ahead, free of occupation, free of violence. A number of surveys in Palestine and Israel showed that the support for the Oslo Agreement reached around 70% among Palestinians and Israelis. This is again in the early 90s. This is almost similar to the yes vote result in the north and south of Ireland, 70%. However, in the late 90s and early 2000, the Oslo peace process collapsed and the Palestinian uprising erupted. As we don't have time today to discuss this Palestinian uprising, I wanted to share with you and focus on the causes of the Oslo peace process in the 90s and make some comparisons with the situation with the Irish peace process. This is, of course, with the recognition that the Irish political process isn't a perfect example for other conflict situations to follow, nor it is without weaknesses and challenges. As you know, sectarianism, divisions, real equality, true peace, legacy of the past, victims, identity are all still serious issues and challenges in the Irish peace process. However, there are some, in my experience, there are some positive elements that we can draw on in the context of Israel-Palestine and the failed Oslo peace process in terms of negotiating the Good Friday Agreement and the process to arrive at the agreement. Before we discuss that, I'd like also to briefly outline the common and general elements for a future political settlement as defined in the international arena in relation to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So what peace proposals have always said about Israel-Palestine? What should a solution in Israel-Palestine look like? Basically, number one, the first element is two states for two peoples, borders based on pre-1967, before the occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. Also, the end of illegal settlements, Israeli illegal settlements and colonies in the West Bank. Jerusalem, no physical division, capital of two states, keep it open as an international city that could be a future capital city for Israel and Palestine both. A timetable for Israeli withdrawal from Gaza and the West Bank, international involvement and guarantees, refugees and the right of return, and demilitarized Palestinian state. The right of return is the core of the Palestinian cause, as I see it, and there has been much discussion and negotiations about how to address this right of return for millions of Palestinian refugees inside Palestine. As I said, 70% of the population in Gaza are refugees from 1948, and outside Palestine, those Palestinian refugees who are living in Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Europe, and so on. What to do about their future, how to address their right of return, their right to their land and homes and so on from 1948. Although this framework is well known and generally agreed upon in the international arena as the foundation of any genuine and just settlement to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Oslo Agreement has failed to deliver any sustainable and workable solution to any of the issues that I've just mentioned. Not only did this failure lead to the mere collapse of the Israeli-Palestinian political process, but it has also had serious consequences on the fate of the people living in that land. Why this political process in the early 90s, despite the hope and optimism that emerged around that time, why did it fail? Why it has been failing? Why it has failed? Why we don't have a way forward in Israel-Palestine? In my experience, this is for a number of reasons. One, the Oslo Agreement ignored the origins and the core issues of the conflict and focused on minor issues such as the creation of a Palestinian Authority, and security forces to maintain law and order in the occupied territories of Gaza and the West Bank. The 1948 Nakba, the creation of the State of Israel and the expulsion of refugees, the fate of those refugees inside and outside Palestine, Israeli military occupation, illegal settlements, prisoners, the status of Jerusalem, and national rights were all left unresolved during the Oslo peace process and in the agreement. Hence, as the Israeli new historian Ilan Babeh put it, the Oslo agreements buried the 1948 and its victims. Postponing these issues for future negotiations that I've mentioned had serious consequences not only for the possibility of creating a just peace in Palestine, but also for the possibility of creating unity and future Palestinian independence. So the first cause of this failure, the first reason for this failure, I would argue, is the core issues of the conflict have been left unresolved. Secondly, the Oslo Accords did not achieve an end to Israeli military control and occupation in Palestinian territories, as UN resolutions and international law have called for. Checkpoints, closure, separation, control of land and people, all continued under the cover of the Oslo process. As Susan Ikram illustrates in international law, in her book International Law and the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict, international law and the UN resolutions applicable to Israeli withdrawal from the occupied Palestinian territories and the refugee issue have been deliberately excluded from the politically driven agenda of the negotiations. In Northern Ireland, to make links, it was clear from the outset that the British military control is essential to the survival and the continuation of the Good Friday process. This produced the withdrawal of the British troops and soldiers and the dismantling of checkpoints and eventually demilitarization. Thirdly, the Oslo Agreement consisted largely of security arrangements. The Palestinian Authority leadership has been required to provide security to Israel and prevent any resistance to the occupation, to the closure, to the checkpoints. Meanwhile, access to land, borders, water resources, and economic infrastructures have been under the full authority and control of Israel. Security agreements, in my opinion, do not lead to real and just peace. They are concerned with military solutions and represent another tool in the agenda of conflict management and maintaining the occupation, and not facilitating transformation. This has been the case in Palestine. The Good Friday Agreement, to make links again, has surely included security arrangements, as you know, and the re-establishment of credible security institutions as agreed by the key players, including Britain and Ireland. However, these institutions here have been reformed somehow. There has been some reforms going on to serve. You might argue with that, and we might challenge it, but however, some efforts to reform the security institution has been made in order to make the security institution accountable to all communities and to provide protection for all people living in this part of the world. In Israel-Palestine, there are still 3 governance and security systems operating and managed by the State of Israel. One is democracy for Israelis, full democracy, elections, government, full rights for Israeli people living in Israel, full rights and protection for illegal settlers in the West Bank, in the occupied territories, and military law and occupation for Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. These 3 governance systems are still in place. There will never be peaceful coexistence and justice until national rights and equality are provided to all those living and sharing the land of Palestine. The Good Friday Agreement has included, as you know, provisions for equality and inclusive rights for all communities living in this part of the world, the freedom to express freely one's identity and political affiliation, and arrangements and structures for non-discrimination and in employment and the labor market. These arrangements and structures do not lead to a perfect political process, as this is, in my opinion, impossible, but they help to create a framework for a workable and acceptable process in which citizens and people could experience freedom and recognize the benefits of the new political arrangements. Oslo, in turn, has completely failed to provide national rights, equality, political and civil freedoms. Hence, this is a major reason for its failure and still continues. Fourthly, the role of external, and we don't have much time, I'll keep an eye on this. Okay, another 10 minutes. Fourthly, the role of external players and international involvement has also contributed to this political failure in Palestine. So the international involvement, particularly the US engagement in Israel-Palestine, has contributed to the continuation of the conflict and the political failure of finding a just solution to the conflict. The Good Friday Agreement, as you know, saw positive and constructive involvement by the US at the political and economic level for, of course, strategic and political reasons. However, in the Israeli-Palestinian context, the role of the US has been biased and negative. Not only did the US fail to facilitate genuine and credible mediation between the Palestinians and Israel, but it has also continued to support one side of the conflict against the other. It has continued to support Israel as a major ally and provide this ally with protection, funds, weapons, and immunity. The US still refuses to allow any other international parties and bodies such as the UN to push for a credible settlement on the basis of international law and the UN resolutions. These resolutions call for freedom and self-determination of peoples under colonial and occupation regimes, such as in the Palestinian case. Aaron David Miller, who has worked with the US State Department for 25 years, has written recently a very interesting piece about his experience of 25 years working on Israeli-Palestinian issues and US mediation. Again, reflecting on 25 years of working there. And again, coming to this conclusion after leaving the State Department, not unfortunately before, saying, and I quote, for far too long, many American officials in Arab-Israeli peacemaking, myself included, Aaron David Miller saying, have acted as Israel's attorney, Israel's lawyer, catering and coordinating with the Israelis at the expense of successful peace negotiations. If the United States wants to be an honest and effective broker on the Arab-Israeli issue, then it surely can have only one client: the pursuit of a solution that meets the needs and requirements of both sides. And again, that's a US official who has worked in the region on behalf of the US administration for 25 years as a mediator, coming to the conclusion after 25 years that the US has always acted in a negative way when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It has always acted as Israel's lawyer, protecting Israel and providing political, economic, and diplomatic protection for this ally, and not working for the needs and the requirements of both sides. Also, Barak Ravid, who works in Haaretz, an Israeli newspaper, well known, it's available online, you can access it. In his investigation of the US recent mediated talks that involved John Kerry and the Palestinian Israeli leaders, in his investigation of that efforts and the talks, that's his conclusion, and he's an Israeli journalist. Americans ignored, and I quote, Americans ignored the Palestinian leader, Mahmoud Abbas, and held most of the meetings and talked only with Israeli leaders. using Dennis Rosenthal, who's another US or former US official, using Dennis Rosenthal, selling an American-Israeli agreement on a certain issue as an American proposal. So agreeing with the Israelis and saying what works for you, and then taking it to the Palestinians and saying, this is an American proposal. You have to accept it. Surely, there are other problems and obstacles to reaching a just and true peace in Palestine that I could talk about, including the weakness of the EU, the European Union, that Ireland and the UK are part of. I could talk about the weakness of the EU as an international power and its role in maintaining the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories, directly and indirectly. There is also Gaza, the illegal blockade and military attacks against the civilian population. There is also the military complex and security industry that benefits from wars and conflicts for strategic interest. There is also the challenge of Palestinian divisions. We have to recognize that, Palestinian weaknesses and divisions. There is also the lack of a Palestinian national strategy that has been absent for a long time, that is lacking. Palestinian unity and strategy has been lacking, and this is a major problem in Palestinian politics. Gaza and the West Bank, apart from Israeli control, are divided in political terms by Hamas and Fatah. Hamas continues to control Gaza from the inside, and the Fatah are still involved in the administration of the West Bank. So in political terms, Palestinians are divided, and they have to face this problem of division if they want to find a just solution to the Palestinian question. There is also the unwillingness of the Israeli occupation power to end its military control of Palestine and recognize Palestinian rights. However, in this meeting, unfortunately, we don't have much time to go through all these points and issues. I just want to conclude on one important point for me, which is the importance of inclusion. In all the peace processes that we have been talking about, and the recent efforts to bring together the Palestinian leaders and Israelis to talk about a possible peace process that has been failing, to try to make it possible again, or to revive it, the failed peace process. In all these peace processes in the region that we have had over the last 20 years, one thing, and it's very crucial, that has been missing is inclusion, including all the parties, as happened here on this part of the world, including all the parties in the negotiation process. Key players from the Palestinian side have been sidelined, have been excluded from the talks. Major factions have been as well isolated from the previous negotiation processes. Take, for example, Hamas as a major military and political organization in Palestine. How the US and Israel and the European Union are expected to get a progress and to mediate a genuine settlement in Palestine without involving a major political and military party and organizations such as Hamas. We need inclusion, we need justice, we need credibility in relation to mediation. We don't want a powerful party such as the US to mediate talks and take sides. We want a genuine mediator. We want also, I think, to make this possible, we want also the applicability or the application of UN resolutions in relation to self-determination, in relation to right of refugees to return, and to find a credible and acceptable solution to this important issue, which, as I said earlier on, the refugee issue is the core of Palestine problem. We need also to see an end to the siege, the illegal siege and blockade against Gaza. Children of Gaza need support. People of Gaza need hope. They don't need siege. They don't need blockade. In the West Bank, also there has to be freedom from occupation. And on this basis, then Israel can talk about security. So if we have freedom for the people living there, if we have self-determination, we can also talk about security for all parties. But what has been really happening over the years is that one side demanding security and leaving the other side vulnerable and weak and under occupation and under siege, and that and also not including all the parties in the talks. And this is not going to produce peace. This is not going to produce justice. And I hope by giving you this overview, I provided you with some thoughts and insights in relation to the failure, the political failure, failure in Israel-Palestine, and the continuation of conflict and injustice in Palestine. Thank you for your listening. And I think I haven't done too bad in relation to time.
You've done very well.
It's all right.
There's plenty of time now if anybody wants to ask any questions. Or there's any comments? Yes, go ahead.
I always hear a question in my head when I hear this, and it's like, what can we do? You know, it's like you can't go into a supermarket and say, okay, I'm not going to buy an avocado from Israel, or I'm going to stand in a vigil, as we've had here in Derry, and we've had in Donegal. But what else can we do? That's the big thing that always comes up for me. I feel incredibly helpless.
I think there are a number of actions to take to influence the situation at the individual and community and social and political level. So one course of action that has emerged recently to influence the situation, create some change, is organizing solidarity with the people on the ground and making links with both Israelis and also Palestinians, but also Israelis who are really fighting for justice and fighting for real peace. And let's face it, in Israel there are some courageous voices that have been very strong and critical of Israel's policies in Palestine and the occupied territories. And that includes a number of names that I can think of, including Amira Haas, the journalist in Haaretz, and also Jeff Helper, and Jadon Levy, and so on. Very critical voices saying we need to face our problems, we need to take responsibility for our policies in Palestine, and we need real change. So making links and also building up a solidarity movement to put pressure on government in order to facilitate change and to act as an honest broker when it comes to Israel-Palestine. The EU that I have mentioned, for example, has been very helpful in relation to providing economic aid to Palestine, Gaza and the West Bank in particular, but it hasn't taken a political role, a strong political role, to support a just solution. And there has to be pressure on the EU to take this political leadership. The EU also indirectly, by being silent, by participating, is contributing to the continuation of the conflict and the occupation. Also, a third course of action that has emerged recently, and I'm sure you've heard about it, is BDS, which is boycott, divestment, sanctions. and a group of courageous people who have put this initiative together, Palestinians mainly, calling on organizations, civil society organizations around the world to support boycott of Israeli settlements and of Israel unless it accepts Palestinian rights and it accepts real equality for Palestinians and it accepts Palestinian Palestinian freedom. And this course has been building up momentum. It's been getting support and getting stronger. And as I said, it's based on putting pressure on the state of Israel through boycott in order to provide for Palestinian rights. I think a fourth approach that has been also developing recently is education and providing education to people about the situation. What is it? And what are the core issues in the conflict? And that included taking people on tours. And I think my good friend Margaret has been there before as well, allowing people to see the situation, allowing people to recognize the political realities and the injustice by themselves, and also encouraging those individuals who see it to take action at the community, civil society, and political level when they come back. Okay, I hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
I could ask a question.
Yeah.
What's the biggest obstacle to peace in Palestine? Just, in your opinion.
I think, in my opinion, there are a number of obstacles. And I could point out to the major obstacle, in my view, is the Israeli unwillingness to end the occupation and to facilitate Palestinian rights and accept Palestinian rights, and access, and also provide Palestinian independence or accept Palestinian independence. Israel hasn't been willing so far, this government of Israel, the state of Israel, to accept that. Number two, I think the engagement or the role of the US in the region has been very negative and it hasn't been actually supportive in terms of reaching a just political solution in the region. As I said, it continues to support one side against the other. It continues to be biased. It continues to provide protection for Israel at many levels and not putting real pressure to get to a political solution that is based on peace and justice. In my view, these are the major obstacles for reaching a political settlement in the region. Yeah.
Yeah, so can I ask you, this is really from my own sort of, I'm always torn on the issue of BDS, because you were talking about those resistant Jewish voices from within Israel that exist, and from the academic, thing, I think about not being able to go see. We recognize, of course, that the Israeli Academy bears a responsibility for perpetuating the occupation, but it also has voices like, just off the top of my head, if I couldn't go see someone like Oren Gifchatel talk in such brilliant terms about the geographical separating of Palestinian identity, who has written so much about that, who works at Tel Aviv University, that seems to me like a real loss. So in some sense, you really want to talk about, like, you want to support a movement that does something, but still not silence access to and help rebuild the Israeli left. How would you go about that in your own head, thinking about that? Because it confuses me.
Yeah, I think. I mean, if you look at the guidance, the guidelines that are provided by the BDS movement, it's also available online and by Palestinian organizations on the ground. It states very clearly how to deal with this issue. So it talks about, that's my understanding, the boycott of academics, the academic boycott, talks about boycotting institutions, academic institutions who participate in the injustice, who provide assistance to the occupation in the West Bank and Gaza. It talks about boycotting those institutions who provide an academic cover for the occupation and for the injustice. It does not talk about boycotting individual academics who have been or might be very critical of the situation, who might be against the injustice. So it does not talk, it makes that separation very clear. If there is, as you say, if there is a critical and important voice in the academic arena to engage with, I think the academic boycott is very clear on this. There's no problem with this individual engagement. But what it focuses on is boycotting institutions, academic and educational institutions that participate in the occupation, that justify it or give it legitimacy at the academic or political level. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, just on that issue, the academic boycott, I mean, it's kind of interesting that Israel operates one itself, and that Noam Chomsky is not allowed to enter Israel.
Yeah.
And Ilan Pappé is not allowed to teach there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not only Chomsky and Ilan Pappé. They've been very critical, important Jewish voices to criticize the situation and to provide also some important analysis about what's going on in that part of the world. But also people within Israel, the group of people who are against the situation in Palestine, who are very critical of Israel's policy in the occupied territories, are facing a struggle on a daily basis, are facing problems, are facing harassment. Some of them have hired, after the attacks on Gaza, have hired, or their organizations have hired for them bodyguards to protect them. Some of them have stayed in their home because they couldn't leave. So this group in Israel is there, and it requires attention and support, of course. And it's not only for people who are outside of Israel, like Ilan Pappé and Noam Chomsky, but also for the group who are inside Israel. They're facing problems. Yeah.
Just looking like over the years from the outside, it always seems to me that Israel will not change its position until America changes. And America provides cover for Israel to do what they want to do and to take more land. And I don't understand why America takes that position, because we all express outrage. EU won't take on America. They will express warm words and send money, but they won't do anything about it. And I don't understand also why the Palestinians seem to be on their own in the Arab world, why Israel has its big brother policeman America, but where's the Palestinians' big brother in the Arab world?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. Well, put it that way, there has been very little support for Palestinians in recent years in the Arab world. Most of the governments in the Arab world have strong links and relations with the US and also Israel, directly and indirectly. And they want to play a direct role or a positive role in supporting the Palestinians, as you say, their brothers. They want, because they are again engaged in close links with the US government and with Israel directly and indirectly, and they are not, because of that relationship, they are not in a position, or they are not allowed to be proactive and supportive of the Palestinian cause. Okay, that doesn't absolve them from responsibility. Okay, as I said, the political relationships between some governments in the region and the US are the relationships, those relationships are not allowing those governments to take an active position on the issue of Palestine. I think
Does it come down to money and oil?
there has been, yeah, there has been also, you know, you need to talk about, you need to recognize the economic relationships, yeah. You need to recognize also the military relationship between those governments and the US. So they haven't been really, they have failed, put it that way, they have failed to play an active role in Palestine, okay? That's about the Arab world. You mentioned also the US, why is it so supportive of Israel? That could take all day to talk about. But briefly, I can mention four elements, briefly. And I could talk to you after about those in details. One is the strong Jewish lobby in the US, very strong lobby that provides Israel with assistance, political and economic support. Number two, Christian Zionists in the US have been very strong in supporting Israel and providing support for Israel. Christians who believe in Zionism, okay, as an important element of their religious campaign. And also a third element, excuse me, is the military relationship with Israel. And the important thing in this relationship is one, the military industry and selling arms, okay, and weapons. And number two, Israel acts as an ally for the US in that region, protecting the interests of the US in the Middle East, okay? And number four as well has been the, and I mentioned it I think, the security cooperation between Israel and the US. So it's AIPAC, okay, AIPAC, the Jewish lobby. It's also the security cooperation between Israel and the US. And also another important element is the oil lobby in the US that plays a very negative role again, which is basically their role, this oil lobby, its role is based on the continuation of the conflict and instability in the Middle East, because that's beneficial for the access to oil and access to resources. So in terms of US foreign policy, these elements are there, and we could talk about that and the negative involvement of the US in the region based on those four elements for a long time, but unfortunately we don't have time now. Yeah?
Is there no possibility of a bicultural settlement in Palestine as a whole?
Say that again, sir?
Is there no possibility of a bicultural settlement in Palestine as a whole?
Bicultural?
Two cultures,
okay.
Arabic and
Yeah.
Jewish.
A clash of cultures?
No.
Oh.
A union of cultures, one Palestine with two peoples. A bit like Northern Ireland, Protestant and Catholics live in one state with two peoples.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, and I'll take just 1 or 2 minutes to go through this point if you don't mind, Susan. This is a very important point, yes. The one-state solution isn't a problem for many Palestinians, isn't at all, provided that equality and full rights are recognized for them, okay? The problem is Israel hasn't been willing to accept it, and I'll tell you why. Based on two reasons. That's what Israel has been saying. Number one, one-state solution would put an end to the Jewish state as they see it, the end of the dream of Zionism to have the whole of Palestine for the Jewish people. So that would put an end to it. Number two, the one-state solution, according to Israel, would present serious problems to the demographic nature of Israel, okay? That the Palestinians in the long term will outnumber the Israelis in that land, and they will get more power. It's similar to here, I believe. Similar to here. And that has been the position of the Israeli government. The Palestinians, on the other hand, have got also, generally speaking, they are open to that possibility, as I said, but they've also have got some fears and concerns about it from the Palestinian side. And one of that is they would be treated as second-class citizens in this one-state solution because Israel has the power, okay? And it would continue to hold this power. And number two, they wouldn't have a role in the political arrangements and the power sharing of that one-state structure. Okay, so on both sides, less on the Palestinian side, you have concerns. Okay, but generally speaking, the Palestinians are open to it. Generally speaking, Israel won't accept it. Very clear, it's a threat, and we won't deal with it. But the contradiction of that is they won't also accept a two-state solution. So what do you want? What do you want? You have to choose. And I think, in my opinion, if you ask me, the current government of Israel isn't interested in one or two-state solutions. Okay? Is only interested in the status quo. Maintaining the settlements, maintaining the siege of Gaza, maintaining the occupation, maintaining the injustice. And that's all. This is all fine, and it could be managed. And all what they want is to manage the conflict. They're not looking for transformation. They're not looking for a genuine settlement. All what they want at the moment, the current government, is the status quo. And by the way, those voices that I've mentioned from Israel, the critical voices, have been very clear that this is a government of a status quo. This is a government of occupation. It's not a government of solution. It's not a government of transformation. And the previous governments, we've had problems with them. But this government is, the difference is this government is very clear that, especially Netanyahu, the leader of the government, that under my watch there'll never be a Palestinian state or a one-state solution. So what's the alternative? Is the occupation, and they're prepared to deal with it. Okay, we'll take one last comment if you don't mind, Susan. Yeah. I know you've had your.
Could I just very briefly mention the online lobbying organisation Avaz?
Yeah.
And they frequently send out emails looking for support for the Palestinian cause. And if you go on their mailing list, you can just add your voice. And in a way, from the last bit of discussion, it seems like states can't really put enough pressure on Israel because of the geopolitical reasons, but individuals can have an effect, and Avaz has actually been very successful on a number of issues. Yeah. They cover a whole range of issues, but the Palestine-Israeli conflict is one of them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think, thank you for sharing that. And
you were talking there, which is quite good to end on the one-state solution. Yaser is chairing a panel event as part of the Benedict Kiley weekend in Oman on Friday the 11th of September in Street Arts Centre at 8 p.m. So, you know, that's...
Dervla Murphy will be there.
Dervla Murphy. Who else is there?
Well, myself and Dervla, yeah. And a journalist, a Palestinian journalist.
Palestinian. So that, you know, there's another part of the conversation that can be continued.
Yeah.
There's a couple of leaflets here if anybody wants one, take it with you.
Margaret is involved.
Margaret's actually involved in the Benedict Kiley weekend. I know she'll be here for a few minutes. So, you know, this is one of those conversations that we know can go on and on and on. And, you know, I don't know, do we get anywhere? You know, we always come back in a circle. But thank you so much for your very interesting insight into how things are for you, your family, how your families, they live in Gaza at the moment. It must be very difficult for them. You know? And, you know, we do, our hearts go out to you and your fellow countrymen, you know. So
thank you.
We really thank you so much, and thank you for coming and giving us your time. And just before you go, I would like to say that next week we have Patrick Corrigan from Amnesty International talking about human rights issues in a very local context, as in Northern Ireland, because they are talking about changing our human rights legislation in not a good way, in my opinion. But anyway, so that'll be an interesting conversation, I hope. And listen, thanks again, Yaser. Give Yaser.
Thank you for your time. Thank you very much. Thank you, Susan.